On this week's episode, we have an awesome guest joining us, Thomas, aka Glorious Eggroll. That's right, Glorious Eggroll himself is joining us for an interview. And by the time the interview is over, you're going to be filled with knowledge related to Proton, Lutris, Umu, just gaming on Linux in general, and so much more. In fact, you'll probably be craving an egg roll by the time it's over. So you're welcome, world. Welcome to episode 369 of Destination Linux, your favorite video podcast. My name is Michael.
I'm Jill.
And Ryan is not here today. I have locked him in a basement somewhere. This is Glorious Eggroll taking place.
Nice. So for those curious, Ryan couldn't make it. So we had a scheduling issue, and also being locked in the basement happens. So thank you so much for joining us and being on the show. And let's get started and get this show on the road toward Destination Linux. So joining us is the Lord Glorious of the Eggroll himself.
Aww.
Thomas is joining us to talk about his journey in Linux and also all the project he's working on, which is a lot of projects, and there's awesome work. So welcome to the show.
Well, hello. Hi, everybody. And thanks, everybody, for joining in. Anybody that's listening in. I appreciate the invite. It took us a minute, but we're here.
That's true. For those who are curious, we've been trying to get him on the show, not because he was avoiding us. That to be clear, he's not avoiding us. It was just like the scheduling off and on. That he couldn't do it when we couldn't do it, and things like that. So now I'm so happy to have you join us, Eggy. So let's talk about, first, we'd like to have our guests talk about their journey into Linux. So could you tell us something about, how did you get started in Linux?
Sure. Okay. I brought this up a couple of times. You'll have to excuse my voice. There's a cold coming in, and it's not a fun thing.
No
but
problem.
Apart from that, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I've talked about this a little bit before. When I was in my early teens, I was riding my bike down the street one day, and I had a neighbor that was throwing out some old computer parts. I was already into computers. I had, family on both sides that were big into computers, but I had never heard or dived into Linux at all. And so this one day, I see this pile of computer stuff, and I'm like, oh, maybe there's something I can salvage. So I go over there, and I'm digging through, and the neighbor comes out, and they obviously see that I'm looking through all of their computer stuff that they're throwing out, and then they basically were like, hey, you want to see something cool? And I was like, my 11, 12, 13-year-old brain, for some reason, thought, sure, this is fine. Let's go into a complete stranger's house. That he seemed like he's, in my head,
worked out.
He seemed like he was fine, which he was fine. He was a very nice person. And he brought me in, and then he showed me what was Debian at the time.
Ooh.
And it was cool. He showed me the 3D cube you could do with the desktop. Forget the name of it. Yeah, Compiz. He showed me Compiz. He showed me the whole Matrix screensaver and all the little things the effects you could do on the desktop. I was like, what is this? It's so cool. I know it's not Windows or anything like that, but it's something else running on the system other than Windows. And at that point, I had already known, because I already knew how to install Windows through family. And I already knew, how to navigate my way through DOS and things like that. And so when he showed me this and he explained, hey, yeah, this is Debian Linux. I was like, oh man, this is so cool. Now, the thing is, I initially didn't get hooked on Debian Linux. I just thought it was really cool. So, of course, I went home and I started looking up things. And the first distro that I actually started using and got hooked on was Mandrake Linux. So that's where my entry into Linux began. I started messing with Mandrake. It didn't stick it didn't stick at that time because I was pretty much too young. But at that point, I had already been exposed. I already knew. I was like, oh man, the gears are grinding now.
Yeah.
So
the path is coming. You just don't know when it's going to start, but it's coming.
Yeah. So I was like, I think I was maybe 12 or 13 when that happened. Fast forward maybe just a couple years. I think maybe I was 16, 17. I got into some stuff in high school, like computer. I was the computer teacher's aide. I was on the web team / dev team. I was on the tech team, like the whole 9 yards. Anything that you could get into computer related in high school, I was in. And I learned about a little bit, like quite a few things there. I dipped a little bit more into Linux there because I was doing web work. Like we were doing web design for the school at that time. And then out of high school, one of the first jobs that I got out of high school was as a web developer for a small company in St. Augustine. And that is where my Debian dive kind of really took a second dive. Like, that was when I first got to also experience the joy of installing NVIDIA drivers on Debian.
That's an interesting situation to be in there.
Yeah, that was kind of the second dive that got me a lot more comfortable with working on Linux. Like the first tidbit was just, oh, here's a neat desktop. What else can I do? I'm bored. The second one was, okay, we need graphics drivers. Let's spend, I don't know, 3 weeks trying to figure this out. And I eventually did get it to work, but again, it didn't keep my interest there. And then it was still, again, in the back of my head. And then finally through maybe like my early 20s, I had a point where I hit a Windows update in the middle of playing a game.
Yeah.
Oh,
and I got pissed off. I was doing PvP.
Yeah.
I was trying to shoot somebody. And I got a full-on Windows update, screen minimizes, the whole 9 yards. And I'm like, I was cursing up a storm.
Your story is eerily similar to
mine.
awesome.
I was so mad. So mad. And that's what finally made me flip the switch. Now, keep in mind, like, I turned 40 this year. This was like almost 15, 20 years ago-ish.
Yeah.
So when that happened, I first flipped it. I was like, okay, let's try Ubuntu. We tried Ubuntu. It was okay. It wasn't, I still couldn't tweak it how I wanted to. I tried it for a good month or two, and then I moved to Arch, because obviously everybody was still
naturally, yeah.
Everybody's like, oh, Arch this, Arch that, and
the hype train has been around for a long time.
If you want to learn, Arch is an amazing tool. Arch documentation is awesome. I will say hands down, like I used Arch for a good at least 5 or 6 years, and it was an awesome tool. I learned a lot through using it during those years. But as I got older, I realized that I wanted something that was a little bit more it's not so time consuming, because with Arch you're tweaking things a lot, especially if you're a computer geek. You like to tweak things. Oh, yeah. But that also leads to things breaking. So
especially when you have that much control to tweak everything.
Yeah.
It can go badly,
Yeah.
But it's also the fun of it. So it's kind of like Arch is like a playground for the technologist.
Yes. Yep. Yep. So that I was still using Arch by the time that I had ended up getting my first interview with Red Hat. And so obviously I went to the interview, landed the job, and at that point I also ended up switching over to Fedora. And it wasn't just because, hey, I'm going to be working for Red Hat, I need to switch over to Fedora. It was, I need something that I'm not going to spend so much time on, right, that I can get work done on, but still, if I want to tinker, I can tinker. So that's when I originally switched over to Fedora, and that I've been on that most of the time up until I created Nobara.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that.
Yeah. We'll get to that. And yeah, that's, I guess, my Linux journey in a nutshell is just up until I joined with Red Hat and started using Fedora, and now I have all the projects that I work on today.
Nice. I mean, it's kind of funny how your story is eerily similar to mine, other than the random neighbor thing. The other parts, the other parts, I don't remember who actually introduced Linux to me, like officially, because it's been so long. But there was a time where I found out stuff, kind of played with Debian a little bit, then finally found Mandrake and started like playing around with it more. And the same kind of thing of like leaving it, not staying with it, and then Windows getting to the point where it annoyed me so much that I switched. Like it's
all right, we've hit the point of no return.
Yeah.
While you were going down your journey, I was thinking like, you're hitting every point that I have hit. Like, and at one point, I was like, say it. I was like, I don't know if you could hear me. I was like, say it, Windows. And then it happened. And like, that's crazy. All right, so I think that we have a lot of questions to jump onto. So that was a really interesting story, and I have some follow-ups, but we have so many questions already. We'll get back to those. The next question is that most people know you by your name online as Glorious Eggroll. Now, you also made a project that's based on that with Proton-GE, where you scramble up some additional improvements to the Proton project, which is already a very important effort from Valve and co-weavers for video gaming, for those who are not familiar with it. Why did you decide to start your own branch of Proton? That seems like a very big thing to undertake.
Long story short, I wanted things to work that Valve can't ship. That was it. That was straight up honesty. Like a lot of it was in particular with like the codecs, like the Media Foundation stuff, video playback in video games. And there were also some staging patches that are really beneficial to games that at the time weren't in Proton at all. It was based off of Vanilla Wine. And obviously, Valve put a ton of work into it to get it where it was when I first started. But also, it still needed certain things. Like at least for like the first 3 years, there was an Overwatch patch that it boosted the FPS by like 50 FPS. And that was in staging, but it wasn't in Proton for forever. And then, all of a sudden, hey, Blizzard has Overwatch in Proton or in Steam now. So they had to get it moved over. But that was just one example, I think the biggest part, again, really relies on the Media Foundation side. For those that aren't aware, Media Foundation is basically like a set of codecs and video playback tools that is shipped specifically in Windows, and it's not something that you can freely download anywhere. It comes with Windows, so there's no way to port that over to anything else. You have to either completely reverse engineer it or do it yourself or make it from scratch, which is what the Valve guys were doing. And even with that, a lot of the video playback codecs in particular, they cannot ship because of licensing. And because I'm an end user, I'm not a company. I'm not, I'm just out here doing this on my own. I technically count as an end user. So I was like, okay, well, let's go ahead and try and add just the little bits that we can to see what games we can get running. And it helped a lot. It got a ton of games working, and yeah, there were a lot of regressions. Sometimes we'd have patches that came in, and I'd work with the Valve guys too, and because they were constantly working on Media Foundation on their side as well. They had their own converter for stuff that they were working on. They're still constantly working on that, and I would contact them and be like, "Hey, this is working. Hey, this is working. Hey, this broke." And I actually had a list of games that I would go through and figure out, okay, working. Up, this one's broken. Up, this one's broken. And I just keep reporting. And I think one of the biggest things with that is getting things reported. I might have been I might have been one of the most annoying people when it came to reporting the Media Foundation stuff, but it works now.
Yeah, I don't think that they were thinking it was annoying. I think they were like, "Oh wow, this guy is helping us so much." It
was no. I in their eyes, I don't think I was annoying. I just see, for me, every time that I would find something, report it, and people really underestimate that the fact that bugs can't get fixed if nobody knows about them.
That's true. Yeah.
So you might, even if it does come off as annoying, at least it's out there. So.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's a lot of people who would they would have a bug and well, someone's reported it. That's usually not the case.
Not the case. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so that was a big factor. Another big thing with that was testing cool, neat little patches or features or things that people came up with that they couldn't necessarily ship in Proton. Because you remember Proton, one of the big uses for it was on the Steam Deck when it came out. And even before that, it was on Steam OS. You have some patches that are like kind of testy patches that they can't ship They can't go breaking people's systems. And Proton Experimental wasn't a thing when it first came out. Like, they had just a standard Proton. They didn't have an experimental branch. And even with the experimental branch, there's still patches out there that people make that maybe they'll contribute to upstream wine, and it fixes something, and you're like, oh, we can backport that and get it working in XYZ other games that are also affected by the same bug. So the fact that I was able to do that, take whatever extra patches I could find and put them in, it helped a lot of people to get their games running. Another example of that is the FSR. So a lot of people know that GameScope has FSR built into it. Before GameScope had FSR built into it, it was originally submitted as a wine patch for Proton. But they decided eventually to move it to GameScope instead of wine. And some people don't like having the overhead. These days, there's not really any overhead, and most people are running pretty beefy systems anyway for a GameScope. But some people don't want to run GameScope, and or maybe they have like a potato system that they're trying to run it on. And in that case, they can use my build to use FSR without having to use GameScope.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's
just
wonderful.
Again, another little example of patches, things that we maintain and we keep up to date that are in Proton-GE that aren't in normal Proton. It's, and I do try to get as much as I can upstreamed if possible. Anything that I can try and submit or say, hey, this might be a good idea, I shoot it to those guys immediately. I've been in the same Discord with them for years now. Like, even before Proton was a thing, I was contributing and QAing and reporting stuff for DXVK and other side projects like that for a long time.
Nice.
Oh, that's awesome. So, Thomas, professionally, you are a software maintenance engineer, and in your spare time, you are often found improving the life of a Linux gamer like me and Michael. Whether that be with Proton-GE or Lutris, what motivates you to dedicate your time and expertise to these projects?
I don't know if it's a matter of motivation as much as it is problem solving. I love figuring out puzzles.
Yay.
It's one of those things, and it's really weird. And I look at my Steam library every now and then. I'm like, God, what is wrong with you? Because I have the biggest freaking Steam library, and I swear I spend more time trying to figure out and getting games to work than sitting down and actually playing games. Like, I do, don't get me wrong, I will sit down every once in a while and play through a game and enjoy it when I dedicate time to it. But more often than not, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on with it. And like, the gears are grinding while I'm figuring out the puzzle. And that's what keeps me hooked. Like, the fact that I'm able to be like, oh yeah, I got this working. Oh yeah, this one. Another perfect example of that. There's a game, Catherine Classic, on Steam, and that game, it has a lot of cutscenes, anime cutscenes, and it's been broken for like eternity. I got it working. Like, I just kept going every time that I would do a new release, or every time I would just do a little tweak, or every time that I would see something posted about maybe other games, because there are other similar games that might need the same fixes. And that's what happened. There was another game that had similar fixes, and somebody said, hey, I did this and this in Wine Tricks, and it got this game working. I was like, oh, let's go try it over here. And that's what happens. Like, you get when you do that over a span of several years, you get these little things that just add up, and you remember it clicks in the back of your head, and you're just like, now we can go fix this one, and now we can go fix this one, and now we can go fix this one. It's a lot of fun. It's just like a lifelong puzzle solving journey.
Nice.
Oh, that's wonderful. And it's because of you that I got my dearly beloved Talos Principle 2 demo to work.
Yay.
The demo was problematic. It's been fixed now. It's got a gold rating on Proton-DB, but
that's awesome.
But yeah, I love Proton-GE. Yay. And speaking of spare time, Aggie, thank you so much again for helping my dear friend Matthew Commandon, the creator of Lutris, on Lutris, and at his booth the last few years at the Southern California Linux Expo.
Yeah, when he first invited me to that, I was super excited, because that was the first year that I'd ever gone to Scale. I didn't know what Scale was until he invited me, and I was like, oh, that's cool.
Wow.
I get to show off all these video games working, and that was a blast for me. And then I got to meet everybody.
Yeah.
And so it was. That's kind of like for me. I feel like I have to do it every year now because it's just an awesome
Yay.
experience.
Oh, good. Yeah, Matthew needed you so much, Aggie. It was, I would see him at his booth. You know, he's the only one there and getting swarmed. And he needed more manpower. And, you know, occasionally we'd have, you know, Empty would come in and Jordan, host of Linux Gamecast, would helped him for a few years. But
it's also nice to have people that can swap out.
Yeah, like, swap out, have more people.
What's that like?
You
guys always get hammered by everybody. You're always super busy. We get lucky sometimes where it's like, okay, I'm back. You can go get your coffee now. If you need to go get a coffee, do whatever. I'll handle it.
Well, it's funny because for those actually, Eggy got a really up close experience of seeing that happen because our booths were right next to each other.
Yes.
And this year, and it was very fun because we were hanging out. When there was a small downtime, we were able to talk and, you know, kind of just chat amongst ourselves. But for the most part, our booth was just swamped.
Yeah,
so we were thinking like every year we think about like, do we want to do another booth? And then we do it. So I don't know if we're going to next year, probably because it usually happens the same way. But when you said having people to be able to swap out, that is a very important thing. Like
it is.
In fact, at least one person who can like give spare time to the other person. So like even just 2 people is not enough. You need like 4 if you can. So it's
at least 3 or 4
funny.
people is really good.
Yeah. And it was so nice, Aggie, having you, because what better person to be representing Lutris at the booth than one of the people, the leads that works on it.
Yeah, well, it works out really well because I'm able to answer a lot of the Wine and Proton specific and Windows gaming specific questions, whereas Strider, on the other hand, is able to answer a lot of the emulation specific questions for like all the different game emulators. Like he had, he had Elder Scrolls, I think it was Morrowind he had running on Box 64 on a Raspberry Pi.
Yes.
And I saw that and I'm like, what the heck, dude? That's awesome.
Yeah. He came up to us and showed us like, check out this, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool, Morrowind." He's like, "It's on a Raspberry Pi." Like, wait, what?
So it's fun. We get to show. It's like we kind of get to show off to each other on different things that we work on.
Yeah,
really, really cool.
So
it's so wonderful having you next to us.
Oh yeah, for sure. And speaking of Lutris, we might as well go into that for a little bit because, as Jill mentioned, you do work on the Lutris. And some of the people in our audience might not be familiar with it. So could you explain what Lutris is and also why you decided to get involved in the project?
Okay. Well, officially, in the words of Strider, it is a game preservation platform. It's basically an application, and it's able to manage emulators for various different games, as well as also like Wine gaming and Proton gaming and gaming, like playing Windows games on Linux. Like obviously playing Windows games on Linux is the big one of the bigger factors that it brings a lot of people in. But the fact that it can also do all those other things with all the other emulators is another big part. And there's a lot of people in the emulator community. And I think people maybe either don't fully realize that or they underestimate how much work goes into that side of things as well, on top of, you know, the standard Windows gaming side. But, you know, bottom line, we try to handle everything under the sun in Lutris, not just specifically Windows gaming.
Yeah, making it possible to easily set up, or as easy as possible to set up a game that was either emulated or a Windows game. It's actually kind of funny because I found Lutris because of emulation. I was trying to get some N64 games to work on Linux many, many years ago. And I found Lutris and I was like, wait, there's no way it's this simple. And then it was just, you run this little script installer thing and like, it's done. Like, okay, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And that's another thing that kind of got me involved with Lutris. One of the reasons that I kind of wanted to jump in and help on the Windows gaming side is because I saw that they had these scripts set up. And when compared to like, say, something like Play on Linux. I knew that Play on Linux originally had scripts like that, but I was not comfortable with the interface. I hadn't used it enough. And then for me, Lutris just clicked. When I first used it, it pretty much just clicked right away. And I was able to very quickly figure out where certain things were that, if I needed to change something, if I want to modify something. And the fact that the code or the scripts for installing stuff were community based, that made it a lot easier to get other people involved that might figure something out that you don't know to get a game running. And eventually that's also kind of what moved on to or evolved into Proton fixes. Proton fixes was a thing that was created by another developer that was already working on that for Proton. And I forked that project and started incorporating all of the Windows gaming fixes that we had in Lutris scripts into Proton fixes. And that's where Proton fixes really kind of took off.
Nice.
In terms of Proton-GE.
I didn't even know that you made Proton fixes. So like,
yeah, well, I mean, like I said, I wasn't the original developer. I forked it, and then really that's kind of where it really bloomed afterwards.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I wasn't aware that you were involved in it. Just like, we're going to talk about it later, but the UMU project.
Yeah.
So I talked about that project literally like 2 weeks ago on Twill. And then Eggy sends me a message like, hey, this is why this, like, wait, you're involved in that too? How many things are you involved in? It's like, it's getting to the point where there's no way to list them all at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was, the other thing was that you didn't realize it because it was named
you renamed it
LWGL when I talked to you, and then we were everybody was pretty much like, oh god, that name is awful. So we got it to something that's easier to say in conversation and kind of makes sense. So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
This episode of Destination Linux is sponsored by LINBIT. LINBIT has been keeping digital businesses running for over 20 years. They're the makers of open source products like DRBD, which is high availability software that has been part of the Linux kernel since 2010, and LINSTOR, industry-leading open source software-defined storage. LINBIT has an active presence in the open source community, and they collaborate with the community to help identify and build new features. LINBIT provides enterprise-grade software that runs on a variety of platforms and OSs without vendor lock-in. What that means is that you could choose the software on any platform, including specific hardware that you want to use, or just off-the-shelf hardware that you get and connect it. All of this stuff can be interchanged really easily. And with DRBD and LINSTOR, you can have high-speed replicated block storage in almost any configuration, whether it's Kubernetes, Apache Cloud, or OpenNebula. There's even DRBD proxy for long-distance replication. LINBIT is run by its founders to this day, and all of its engineers and developers are in-house with offices in Europe and North America, which allows them to have global 24/7 support to complement their enterprise offerings. Visit linbit.com to learn more about the people behind LINBIT and the awesome software for block storage, duplication, and more.
So in addition to your work you do on Proton-GE and Lutris, you decided you didn't have enough free time, I guess. So you created your own Linux distro called Nobara Linux. What were the deciding factors for why you wanted to make a new Linux distro, and what makes it unique compared to other distributions?
Well, this one's a fairly easy one. I needed something for my dad. My dad, he's a avid PC gamer. He's been playing games on PC for a long time, and it's mostly like single player games. So, there's not really anything related to anti-cheat or anything like that he ever had to worry about. And so when I lived in Florida, I would go visit my parents every other weekend or so. And sometimes I would get calls where his computer would break or mess up to some degree. And I had one weekend where I went over there and a Windows update had completely just annihilated his USB drivers. Nothing he plugged in would work.
Oh,
I'm like,
boy.
I was like, okay, this is weird, because it would work. They would work if you went to the BIOS. You could use the keyboard. The mouse worked fine. And I was like, this is really, really, really weird. Thanks again, Windows. So at that point, after I had gotten his system, like, we did another full wipe, got a full reinstall, got his USB drivers working again. And then at that point, I said, okay, I know you're going to use this just so you can get by, but we're going to try and convert you over to Linux. So And all he really does is use it for games. He doesn't really do too much. He works, he comes home, he plays video games. So I went through his Steam game list, and I made a list of all the games that he plays. And I made a spreadsheet. Does it work on Linux? Does it not work on Linux? What does it need? Does it need anything extra? This and that. So I set up the spreadsheet, and I got most, if not all, of his games running on Linux. And at that point, we fully converted him over. I had him running on it was a version of Arch at that time. It was Antergos. Yeah, it was Antergos. So we set him up on Antergos first, and then obviously when I moved over to Fedora, I switched him over to Fedora. And they're easy to set up on Fedora, but I knew that there were certain things that you still needed to install. Like you still have to set up. At that point, you still had to install Lutris and Wine and get Proton properly set up and make sure you have all the correct dependencies installed. Make sure Vulkan's installed, because this was way back when all this stuff was just starting. And there was a lot of setup that needed to be done with it. And there were a lot of kernel patches and tweaks and things like that could also be done. And that still holds true to this day. There's like, people see the Nobara kernel these days and you're like, oh man, that kernel's bloated. It's not so much, yes, there's a lot of patches, but it's not bloated in the way you think. A lot of it is specific hardware enablement and a couple of tweaks for gaming, but mostly hardware enablement.
Yeah. So it's funny because a lot of people use the term bloated to just mean it's more than they expected. And that's not what that word means. That word means that it's so badly excessive that it doesn't work well.
Right.
And that it's actually a hindrance. When it's just slightly bigger than a thing that's already that it's based on, does not make it bloated. It's like when people say KDE is bloated. Like, what are you talking about?
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
First of all, it's one of the lightest DEs that's will blow your mind if you actually check the specs of it. Like, and then they're like, oh, but that means it's more than they expected to be able to do, and therefore it's bloated. Like, I just want to hopefully we could start a new trend of using the word correctly, because that would be helpful.
Yeah.
I know that's probably not possible with the TikTok world, but I mean,
yeah. So I mean, like I said, with that kernel in particular, it's mostly just hardware enablement. Like a lot of people have ASUS devices, the ROG Ally, the G14, the G16. So we've got patches for that. Some people have the all AMD version of the MacBook that came out right before they released the M1s, which the full AMD one, it's all AMD hardware. Like that's an awesome.
Didn't even know there was an AMD.
Oh yeah. So we've got the T1. That was the T1 model. I think it's T1, T2, maybe something like that. But we've got those patches in there. We got patches for the Steam Deck in there. Patches for a couple other Legion Go, a couple other handheld devices. Just the things that you would want for gaming on those devices. But yeah, the bottom line was just to get all of those things installed and working and running out of the box so that you didn't have to spend another hour or two after you've installed the OS getting that stuff set up.
That is a very justified reason. And also I love the fact that you did it for your dad.
Yeah.
Like that's awesome. Because it's like there's a lot of people who build projects that are just solving a problem for a family member, and then all of a sudden it's benefiting a lot of people at that point. There's a very similar story because we had Wimpy, Martin Wimpris, join us on a previous episode, and Wimpy said that he started Ubuntu Mate for his family for the exact same kind of thing. So I think that's awesome, and it's definitely something that is underappreciated, the fact that the people are making these projects for a very specific reason and then fitting like thousands of people, so it's awesome that you're doing that. And the Nobara project, first of all, is it Nobara or Nobara?
It's Nobara.
Okay. So
it's based off of the Jujutsu Kaisen character. I'm a weeb.
I love the logo too. So cool.
Yeah.
So
we actually have a community member that did that a while ago.
Nice.
And it popped up out of the blue, and I was like, wow, that's actually really good. It's really on point, and we just rolled with it.
Awesome.
That's always the best, the community input, and it's so like a lot of times community contributions in that space is not really looked at on the community side. This is like a side tangent for me as a designer, trying to put stuff into developments, and there's sometimes where the developers don't really give consideration to designers that way. So I just want to first of all say thank you for not even I didn't have anything to do with it, but thank you for being open to that sort of stuff, because it is sadly rare. But designers
I'm
would love to
admit.
contribute.
Yeah, I'm quick to admit, as like, if there's something that I know I'm not good at, I will definitely be like, hey, if anybody wants to do this, or anybody wants to make a logo, do whatever. I suck at it. I'm good at this. I suck at that. Feel free to contribute if you want. And
Nice.
we've got a lot of awesome community members that have
right.
contributed a lot of stuff. I mean, not just the logo stuff, but there are a lot of community members that contribute to Nobara in particular. Now that it's grown quite a bit, and they've been a blessing.
That's awesome. I mean, that's one of the best things about open source, right? Is because you make something that you had a specific purpose, and then everybody else wants to help improve it.
Yep.
Yay.
And also improve it for your dad too.
Yep.
They even know it, but they are. So that's awesome. So
amazing.
So real quick, since Fedora 40 is out, how soon can we expect Nobara 40?
Probably a couple weeks from now. Maybe at least like 3 to 4 weeks. Not too bad.
That's a lot faster than I was expecting.
Yeah.
So we have this written in our FAQ on our website, but usually what we do is we'll wait about 2 weeks to see what kind of release kinks Fedora has, because sometimes it's great, sometimes there's not really anything major, but then also sometimes we'll find something that's somewhat major or something that needs to be fixed, and it's like, okay, let's give it a little bit of time, see if we can get that fixed. And that's what the first 2 week buffer is kind of for. And then on top of that, we have to rebase all of the Nobara specific packages. So for those that don't know, in Nobara, we still use the Fedora official repository and updates repository, but we don't pull them raw. Instead, what we do is we have we'll take like a monthly snapshot, and we have a couple of if there's an important package or an important update, we'll do another snapshot like as we need to. But usually we'll do a standard monthly snapshot of the Fedora repositories into our own CDN based hosting, and that's where users usually get their main packages if it's something that we don't touch. If it is something that we touch, we have a GitHub, and it has all of the packages that we mess with. I think there's maybe anywhere between 75 to 100, maybe 150 packages. I could be wrong. But we have to rebase every time there's a new Fedora release. We have to rebase those packages, so that takes a little bit of time as well. And that's currently what I've kind of been working on as well. But yeah,
well, I mean, that's a lot. That sounds like a lot of work to do, and you're doing it very quickly. So,
yeah. Well, it's not me alone too. Like I said, I've got people in my Discord and dev team, and people that help me out now. When I first started, yes, it was all me alone, and I still do manage like quite a lot of it by myself. But I have people that on a regular basis they'll submit, oh, here's a kernel update with NT sync fixed for wine, or here's we need Mango HUD updated, or we need GoVerlay updated. I get people that submit that through GitHub now, and it's great because I'm able to just pull it in, review it, and then just fire it up in Copper, and it's good to go.
Nice.
Oh, awesome. Well, something else I wanted to ask you, Aggie, was I actually use, as I was talking about earlier, Proton-GE to play my games, and on every machine that I use for Linux gaming, which is like 20. So,
of course it is, Jill.
Yeah. I have lots of gaming rigs. So I also use it in, of course, in Steam and in the Heroic Games launcher. Can you actually tell us about UMU, the Unified Linux Wine Game Launcher you were working on, and
Yes.
what makes it so needed for the Linux community?
Okay. Yes, I actually wanted to get into this anyway, so it's a good question. Usually, when you launch a game using Proton in Steam, it will launch it has its own runtime, and it launches this runtime inside a BRAP container that Valve uses called Pressure Vessel. So Steam runs Pressure Vessel, which runs a container with this runtime. And then from there, inside that container, it runs Proton. And the reason they do that is because with this runtime in place, it makes sure that the games are using the exact same libraries, the exact same versions, no matter what system it's running on. And that's really, really, really important for consistency and debugging purposes, and making sure that there's not something different on this system compared to another system that's trying to run it.
Basically eliminates the whole multiple distros thing.
Exactly. And so that's what makes Proton really, really awesome and allows it to work for a lot of games. We wanted to take that whole process that it does and use it for non-Steam games. Normally, if you before UMU existed, I was adamant about telling people, please do not use Proton outside of Steam. That's changed now with UMU. And the reason is because of that runtime. You need that runtime. You need that container pressure vessel to make sure everything's running the exact way that it's supposed to. Now what we've done with UMU is we've taken that exact same process that Valve does, where it runs a script that runs pressure vessel and loads up the Steam runtime, loads up Proton, and then runs your game and sets up the prefix, the whole 9 yards. UMU does like the exact same thing that Steam does now, which is awesome because now it can run it can run Proton for non-Steam games. You can use it in Heroic, you can use it in Lutris. The most recent version of Lutris already has it in. Obviously, we're still working out kinks, so please, nothing's perfect.
Still experimental label, yeah.
Yeah.
But also, it's been pretty good so far.
Yeah. It's awesome. I'm super, super happy with it. So we've got that in Lutris. There is a pull request for Heroic that they're working on to get it into Heroic. We do have a flat pack as well. There is a kick with the flat pack that we're trying, or like a kink that we're trying to work on, where for some reason in the Steam Deck mode or the GameScope session mode, when you put the Steam Deck, for some reason it's not running there. So we're trying to figure that out. But if you switch to desktop, it works fine. So that's just something that we're trying to figure out right now. Obviously, we want that to work because it's vital for the Steam Deck. But apart from that, it does its job. It does exactly what we want it to do. It sets up the container and runs the game just like that. And there's no changes or discrepancies in the runtime or anything else. And also on top of that, it automatically will download the latest runtime, download the latest pressure vessel, and download the latest Proton-GE or UMU Proton. So UMU Proton is just a fork of Proton that has one or two other patches, mostly stuff to allow the UMU Proton fixes to work on top of Proton. It's not as robust as GE at all. It's basically, we wanted something that was stable that people could fall back to. That still worked with UMU. Another thing with UMU is that we have, for those who don't use Proton-GE or don't know, Proton-GE has what we discussed before, Proton Fixes. Proton Fixes is a script that runs per game. It generally identifies by the Steam game ID, but with UMU, we've developed a database for non-Steam games that works the same way. So everything gets assigned an ID, and then it can look up that ID and apply the same fixes or whatever fixes are needed for non-Steam games. So, for example, here's a perfect example. Red Dead Redemption 2. You've got the Steam version. You've got the EGS version. You've got the Rockstar version. Like, all three of those are different launchers, different platforms, but they all need the same fixes. So in this case, we've got the ID for the Steam version, and then we have the other two versions, which in this specific case have a symlink to the main one so that it can apply the same fixes. And the way that works is each store also has some way for identifying games, whether it's like a unique ID or a checksum or a secret token or things like that. And we have all those plotted out in the database as well. So if we don't know what the game is, we can say, here's the game title, here's the store, here's the secret key, and it can query the database and give you the game ID. And that's how it is able to apply the Proton fixes.
Oh, nice. That's brilliant.
So, yeah, and we've got a website set up for it too, the UMU web. I can post a link for it, but you
We'll have
can
it in the show
search the
notes then.
website for game IDs, and it has a simple API backend that you can query as well.
That's awesome.
So yeah, the Proton fixes are basically what you would do in like a Lutris install script or a Play on Linux script, where it applies wine tricks, applies any overrides you might need, any DLLs, things like that.
That's awesome. So with Umu, is it, and when it is fully in Lutris and like the experimental stage is over, would it make it possible to basically have the same kind of, let's say for a game that's not in Steam, but is technically would work through Proton? And are you saying that having Umu in Lutris would make it possible for that being part of the script for Lutris? So you can just load it up and theoretically have a game that's not for it, or like not technically made for it, but will still work?
Bingo, exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's basically just a way for us to allow Proton to run correctly without Steam.
I think this is where like a B-roll of like a mind blowing happening.
Yeah, this is
but
huge.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is we're trying to get away from having a million different wine versions, because in the past, what we would do is we would have several Lutris builds, which they have Lutris has its own runtime too, but it's not as robust and it's not running in a container and it's not always perfect. So we tried to move away from that and instead use Proton with Umu, and that way we don't have to have, okay, well, here's a build for League of Legends, or here's a build for Red Dead Redemption or XYZ, or like, because some games need specific patches or specific fixes or specific tweaks, and Umu takes all of that out. So you just have one to rule them all.
Wow, that's awesome.
Wonderful.
I mean, that is fantastic. And there's so many projects that you work on, and I think we've got through. Have we missed any projects? First of all,
I don't think so. I think we're good.
Okay, good. Because I was trying to get the list, and you mentioned the Proton fix. I was like, I didn't even know about that one. So like, okay, so let's move on to another kind of thing. Like, let's look into like the future of Linux gaming. So, what are some of the biggest challenges you see facing the future of gaming on Linux?
Anti-cheat is always going to be a pain in the butt.
Oh yeah,
it's a pain now. It's going to be a pain in the future. I wish things would get better with that, but from what I've seen, things keep tending to go on a worse side, and it's really, that bothers me. Like, especially back when we started, like, the worst that you would have is BattleEye and easy anti-cheat, and then finally at some point we've got past those hurdles. Mostly, we still have some vendors that prefer not to use it, which is a pain in the butt. But now you've got other things like kernel level anti-cheats coming out, like Valorant's anti-cheat and the Modern Warfare anti-cheat that they're using, and it sucks. It sucks. It's, you want to be able to play those new games when they come out, and you can't because the developers have decided, hey, we're going to put a kernel level anti-cheat in there.
I know.
Right.
And Fortnite used to work, and now it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, that's Epic Games.
Yeah.
That's not surprising.
Yeah.
But
that's true.
So to talk on the anti-cheat thing, that's very interesting, because like I've been studying up on the Vanguard situation, because it's been just ridiculous. And I thought of something. I was just wondering if you could confirm or maybe clarify something. When it comes to these kinds of things, I've found out that my understanding could be wrong, that these, for example, easy anti-cheat and BattleEye technically are kernel level, but because they are compatible with Proton, they work on like the Wine kernel, not the Linux kernel. So it's still, and it blocks Windows cheats, which are basically all the cheats that exist. So what I was wondering is, in order to bypass that and still cheat on the game, someone who wanted to do that would I think would have to be able to first get past the stuff inside of Wine, the Wine stuff. Then they'd have to get past they have a Linux part of the cheat. So they'd have to know how to develop for Windows and for Linux, and also how Wine and Proton work with each other. I feel like this is like such a mountain of stuff that they would have to do.
Gigantic mountain of stuff that you would need to know how to do. And even then, the other thing with that is, with Wine in itself, even the slightest change, even the slightest like tweak or patch or whatever, can trigger the anti-cheat if you don't do it correctly. In specific regards to that code, we've seen it with League of Legends time and time again. there's just the code has to be done correctly. If you have to know what you're doing, you have to do it correctly. And even then, like, it's a lot of that stuff is way over my head in that regards. But I've seen other people that work on it, and I know other people that have worked on it, especially like in the past with BattleEye and Easy Anti-Cheat. Like Derek worked on that in the past. He's part of the Code Weavers team, and there's another guy that works with them as well that does a lot of the anti-cheat. I think David, can't remember his last name, but those guys are freaking wizards, and they they've done a lot of anti-cheat work, and it's like if you're expecting to get past that, man, I don't think it's going to happen.
So that's one of, for those who don't know, Code Weavers are people who are they make the I can't remember the name of the fork of wine that they have. What's the name of the it's a pro premium version, and I cover it on the show. So I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah,
what?
I'm forgetting too.
I've got to look it up.
Crossover.
Yeah. I mean, because Crossover Office is what I remember when I first found it. So Crossover is this awesome project or piece of software that basically is a way for you to contribute to Wine without technically contributing to Wine, because a lot of people don't know that Code Weavers are like the person who started Wine is a part of Code Weavers, and a lot of other people who work, that's what they do, is work on Wine. It's just like they do it through a separate company. So like the stuff they do then goes into Wine and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of funny that you mentioned it, because I just wanted to like kind of clarify for those that don't know, this is people who are working on Wine specifically, and the level of skill you need to do to have to do that sort of thing is huge. And it makes me laugh about the idea of all these companies like, well, we can't let them have play on Linux because then they would get able to cheat. Like, you have no idea how complicated this would be.
Go ahead and try, boss.
Yeah.
If you put your game on Linux and you put it as a native game, and I could argue like, okay, that'd be a little bit harder because you would have to do something else. But if you do it as a Proton game, the complexities involved in cheating, just getting past the anti-cheat inside of Proton through the regular anti-cheats that they're already doing, you'd have to somehow break into that from the Linux side, and then still get past their anti-cheats that's on the Wine side. Like, it's very unlikely.
Will mess it up. Like the slightest, even a little tiniest slip up. Like I said, League of Legends was one example. Overwatch was another example.
LOL.
Every once in a while, we'll get a Reddit thread like, I got banned on Overwatch, blah, 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 blah.
Yep, I see those all the time. Yep. I got banned again.
I mean, luckily and thankfully, Blizzard is a little bit more lenient when it comes to Linux users on those games, but still, like, it does happen.
Yeah. And Blizzard is also, I'm pretty sure they have a non-kernel level anti-cheat, which is nice because, I mean, if you have an anti-cheat, like, you don't necessarily need it to be kernel level, but if you do, like, this is just a side tangent. Sorry for people who are wanting to hear about what Eggy's working on. It's so annoying that these companies are talking about this kernel level being necessary, especially Riot Games with their Vanguard. That is ridiculous because that thing runs all the time, not even just when the game runs. And there's just so many levels of that annoys me. But like, they're not even necessary because Valve has proven that over decades with having the VAC system, and it's been effective. And now some people would argue it's not the most effective, but like, it's literally impossible to stop people from cheating, even with these kernel level things, because then they could just have another computer attached and bypass the thing because it's not on the same computer. You know, like there's many ways to get around this. And if they want to do it, they'll figure it out. But if you're talking about developing for Linux to break through a Wine Proton anti-cheat, you're basically talking about like the level of complexity is I don't know, maybe rocket science. Who knows? It's very bad. Yeah. It's very complicated. So it could be. I don't know. But look, we're talking about the future of gaming, and you're mentioning the anti-cheats is an issue. But there's also another way that you could do gaming in the future, and that's cloud gaming. So what do you think about the current landscape of cloud gaming and how it relates to video games? Do you think it actually is something that is a viable solution?
For me, it's not a thing. Like, I don't do cloud gaming very much at all. I mean, I can understand if you don't have the hardware or don't want to have the hardware, or you want portability, or you just want something that you can do on the go very easily, I can understand the want for that. Me personally, I'm spoiled. Like, if I'm running a game, I want it to be running like as beastly as possible as it can on the hardware that I bought. Because I was like, it's like, man, that's what I invested in it for. I want to experience it running top notch. And for me, that's my personal. That's another reason that I don't really do console gaming either. Like, I've had PlayStations in the past and Xboxes in the past. I just don't anymore, because everything that I want mostly comes out on PC at some point.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I have to worry about whether or not it's going to be an Xbox Games exclusive for another 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Darn it, because we want to run it on bare metal.
I mean, I think that I like the idea of cloud gaming, because it gives you access to games you wouldn't normally have access to for like a Linux user, for example.
This is
true. So that's kind of cool. So if someone wants to play Fortnite, they could do it through the cloud gaming solution.
Fortnite, Destiny.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. And I wish it was. I mean, obviously, the latency of that is not going to be great for a competitive game,
which is another thing I dislike.
Yeah. So that's not. It's the idea is cool, but the implementation is not going to be perfect unless you're playing with only other people on the cloud server. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting. But I think I agree with your point about it. Like, you want the performance. If you're going to play the game, you want to have it the best experience, and the cloud gaming is usually not that. At least not for me.
Yeah.
Yep. That exactly. And like, just don't get me started on Destiny 2.
Yeah.
Like, that's been
Now I'm very tempted to get you started on Destiny 2.
I played that. That's the whole reason that I had consoles to begin with, because I played the crap out of that game. Destiny 1, like I did rating the whole 9 yards on that, both consoles. And then when Destiny 2 hit PC, I played that before switching over. And they have BattleEye and Easy Anti-Cheat both work on Linux now, but they refuse to turn it on for, I guess, because the reasons that everyone else always
reasons
said.
That are ridiculous. Yeah.
Reasons that are that's it.
Yeah, they're like even Epic Games does the same thing. They both have the anti-cheat and BattleEye for Fortnite. So it makes me laugh, because I started researching this whole anti-cheat thing because of the Vanguard news, and it's fascinating because the logic that they give is terrible, because it, like, as we talked about earlier, like the complexity and the difficulty to do it is so high anyway. It's ridiculous. But also the fact that they think about, like, oh, there's not enough people who are Linux gamers to do it. And I was thinking, like, the people who play League of Legends are essentially jumping through hoops and giving themselves headaches on a routine basis in order to play that game. And they said, well, there's 800 people playing this game, and that's not worth the risk. But if you look at their actual message, it says, and yesterday. So that's 800 people in a single day.
Yeah.
And they're trying to say, like, that's not, like, if you give us more than 1 day metric, it's going to be a lot higher than that.
Yeah.
And it's also the amount of people who are willing to get a headache and jump through hoops to do that.
Yeah.
And I am not one of those people. I would play that game.
Yeah, tell me
for the fact that I'm not doing that.
As the person who maintains the Lutris install script for League of Legends and has for many years. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Aggie, me and Matthew used to go to Riot Games every month for their community hack night. And, League of Legends is all developed on Linux on the back end, but their own developers can't play it on Linux. So we used to have talks with them all the time. And Matthew's like, please just make it easy for us.
God.
That makes it more annoying.
I know.
They developed on it.
For years. And they were trying one of the lead developers was trying, and they kept saying, oh, there's just not the numbers for Linux. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. There are now.
But
now we have Steam Deck.
That's so wonderful to know that they either they used to, or maybe they do now, still develop on Linux, and and they don't use it. Like, that's,
I know,
insane. But also this argument that I've seen this on many different types of software. It does not just gaming, but the argument of the Linux platform is not big enough, is
it's
complete
ridiculous.
nonsense.
That's
Yeah.
nonsense.
Yeah. And it's and you can even like show evidence of like statistical proof that it is nonsense because of like their own numbers. Like, first of all, how to
also be bigger if you stop making everything a pain.
if you try, yeah, it's true, exactly. But like the fact that they put that much, like they make it such a pain, and then they say 800 people in a single day, and don't understand like if you just made it where I could just click play and then play it, I would play it. And the amount of maybe millions of people who would do that, at least thousands, like tens of thousands who would do that, is enormous. Like it's ridiculous that they do that. And it also applies to software. I was having a conversation with this email client that I won't name necessarily, but it's the exact same argument, which is, again, total nonsense that, oh, there's not enough people on the Linux platform for us to do this. And I said, well, how do you know that? And they said, well, there's only this amount of people who come to our forum and ask for it. What?
Oh, jeez.
Of course, they don't know that.
Yeah.
Like first of all, when they go to search for alternatives, that never shows up because it's not an alternative. And then when they do find it, they have to go through the process of going to a forum, then signing up, and then asking you. The amount of steps required to like the metrics they use, it's just so ridiculous.
Could you imagine how many people would be playing League of Legends on Linux if it was just a flat pack?
I know. Oh, yeah. Exactly.
It's literally just point click. Oh, I found a button.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
It's kind of funny because of like how much of a pointless argument they have, and if they just took maybe 10 seconds to think about what the ramifications of just making it easy would be, like how much that would bring in, and they instantly justify the effort. Like that's the funny part. And even if they didn't want to, they could still use, I mean, especially with UMU, you could make a flat pack with UMU and still use Proton, still get the benefit of the complexity. Stop it. Okay, stop it.
Stop it, definitely. And but thank you to Glorious Eggroll here. I can play League of Legends on Lutris.
For now, until they add Valorant.
Until they change it. You got
that's the thing is they're planning on adding the Valorant anti-cheat to League of Legends in the upcoming months. It's been an ongoing discussion for a long time. So everybody's just like, oh, come on.
Actually, they made so I was thinking about making a video on this. I'll just say it here, I guess. There was this, I was going to make a whole video on this. I already recorded it. It's like 20 minutes long. So I'm not sure if I'm going to, because it's so long. But their frequently asked questions they put in the announcement blog was so ridiculous that it made me make the video because it was so bad. Because they were like, first of all, the Linux doesn't have the tools and utilities for us to make these kernel level things. And they literally called them backdoors, by the way. And then I was like, yeah, thanks. Good job, Linux developers, because that's ridiculous. But it's just funny because the way they say things is it's so weird because they're trying to justify things that don't make any sense. And sometimes they use like marketing tactics. And as a person who's been in marketing for a long time, I see those tactics in their messaging. And it's like, it's infuriating because they're not even trying to use logic. I would be more appreciative and I would respect them more if they just said, we don't support your platform and we don't care about you. If they said that, I'd be like, okay, well, that's kind of mean, but at least I respect the honesty.
Yeah. Then not to spend more time on it.
Yeah, because if your argument is the platform is not big enough, that's wrong. If your argument is that it's too easy to create cheats to break the game, that's wrong. Like, it's just, Riot Games, you're wrong. Okay,
it's wrong sauce all the way around.
That is right, Jill. It is wrong sauce. Well, what's right sauce is this interview, so we should get back to it. So, Jill, what's the next question?
Okay. So, Eggy, what excites you most about being a developer of open source software? You've touched on this a bit, but
I'm going to say this has changed. Like before, I would have said it was the same thing as I said with figuring out puzzles.
Yeah.
But I think collaboration has taken over.
Nice.
Collaboration with open source software and people involved in open source projects has been a big game changer for me, especially with the last couple of years going, going to Scale and going to Ubuntu Summit. Like Umu wouldn't exist if I hadn't gone to Ubuntu Summit. Like when I went to Summit, when I went to Summit, that was one of the first things that we discussed, because like it was me, Strider, Linguin from Heroic, and Eric from Valve, and we were hanging out on a daily basis. And then when I talked to Eric, I was like, "Hey, is there any reason that we can't run Pressure Vessel outside of Valve or outside of Steam?" He's like, "Oh, you totally can. In fact, it's documented." I was like, "Wait, what?" And then I went and looked over the documentation, and I was like, "How has nobody done this before?" So then I talked to, I talked to the people that we were hanging out with. We're all involved in this project. And Morrow from Bottles, he was supposed to be at Summit. I believe he got invited, but he wasn't able to make it for some reason. But we also got him involved in this, when we got the group together. So I'm glad that we were all able to come together and start like hammering out this project and just making something awesome.
That is really cool. I mean, I've like these different conferences, like, so there's something, this is like another side tangent. Sorry. There's a lot of people who don't like put in effort into going these like, local Linux user groups or conferences and stuff like that. It is 100% worth it. Even if you just go to a local lug and just meet some people who are in the community, it is definitely worth it, because it's like the whole idea of like, we all live on the internet. We all have these online experiences with people, and we get to know people online. It is very different to meet people in person and the experience, and just, even if it's just like a quick conversation, just, at a lug, it's just do it. Find your local lug, do it. If you have a conference local to you, 100% go. Yeah. And I now want to go as many conferences as I can possibly go to.
Same. I'm hooked now. Like, I love it. It's awesome. I mean, the amount of people that you meet, and just being able to network. And it's not even networking for the sake of like business networking, whatever. It's networking for the sake of, oh, this project is really freaking cool. Like, you get to see cool stuff that they're working on. They get to see cool stuff you're working on. And then it opens up new possibilities.
And that's the beauty of open source, is that we can come together at these conferences and talk about our projects, and, people can fork them and improve on them. It's just awesome.
I mean, when you meet someone, you're like working on a project, and you meet someone who's interested in the project in person, and they start contributing with you right there.
Yeah.
It's very different experience. It's very awesome. When you get a pull request, that's cool. But when you get a pull request in person, that's amazing,
Yeah.
So, and also just going to conferences, meeting people, it's definitely worth it. And let's get back on topic. For those who are wondering, we do this all the time. We get into tangents quite a bit. This is probably the first time we've done it with a guest on our show.
Yeah, it is actually.
But I like to talk a lot too. I can keep, you get me started, I keep going.
All right. So thank you for being, being okay, so cool with it and everything. But we also knew Eggy would be totally fine with it, because we've known him for years. And so again, it's fantastic that you're on the show. So Jill, what's the next question for Eggy?
Okay, so Eggy, your contributions to Proton-GE and Lutris have made an incredible impact on the gaming community. What are some of the biggest changes you face in developing these tools?
I will say one of the hardest things is every time that Proton Upstream has a yearly rebase. Because what happens is they bring in all of the changes for the version of Wine that's been developed through the previous year. They bring in all those changes, and then they rebase all of their Valve patches on top of that. And then I have to go on top, like once they get that set up, and they might remove components or add components. And so once a new release comes out, which is once a year for a major release, I see it, and I was like, okay, time to go rebase everything. Story of my life. Like it's like how I explained with the Fedora 40 thing on a bigger scale, because instead of updating things that have developed over a couple of months, you're doing something that came in over the span of like an entire year or plus. It's a lot. And then on top of that, like part of the thing with Proton-GE is we rebase Wine staging on top of Valve's Proton or Valve's Wine. So we have to rebase staging on top of like all of the changes that they imported. That's a big one. Usually I swear there's been at least like 3 or 4 times where we've had the FSR patches that I explained before, where they've broken to the point where I was like, I don't think we're going to be able to do this again. And then I'll announce, okay, we're deprecating this, use game scope. And then 2 weeks later, somebody from my community will come in and they'll be like, oh, I fixed the FSR patches. And I'm like, here we go again.
Oh boy.
A good problem to have, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. It's nice to have people that are able to figure out the difficult stuff that I can't figure out, because I do dip my fingers in a lot of things, but I am not the most knowledgeable. And there are people out there that know way more than I do, and they've been like super helpful.
That's how I feel like every day.
Yeah.
But for those who are curious, FSR means Fidelity FX Super Resolution.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. I was thinking, like, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, full screen resolution. Nope, that's not what it means.
Nope, Fidelity.
But it's a very cool thing for those who are curious, like a brief overview. Well, how would you describe FSR, Aggie?
It is a method of upscaling for those who are familiar with AMD hardware, you've probably heard of FSR. It's similar to DLSS for NVIDIA or XeSS for Intel. The implementation that we have is just FSR 1.0. We cannot move it further than that version. So it's basically just it's there if you absolutely need it. But these days, most games have FSR built in. But basically, it's for upscaling your games. The trick with both FSR and Proton is that Proton also has something else called a full screen hack. So you've got FSR, then you've got the full screen hack. And FSR, when we rebase it on Proton, it has to be compatible with full screen hack. FSR increases the quality of the picture when you blow it up or upscale it. Full screen hack adjusts the picture so that it's not skewed if you put a different resolution than your monitor. So, for example, say you have an old game. I have a Proton video that I've explained this in. If you have an old game that runs maybe like 800 by 600, say like Age of Mythology was the example that I used. It runs in 800 by 600. If you normally would try to launch it on a 16 by 9 monitor, it's going to stretch out and it's going to skew and it's going to look all goofy. What the full screen hack does is it instead puts it at the proper resolution and just gives you black bars. So that way it's not skewed, it's not weird. You see it in the resolution that it's intended. And if you combine that with FSR, you can upscale it and make it look nice while still retaining that resolution that it's intended to be played on.
Very nice.
Yeah, that's one other struggle is, again, keeping the FSR patches working with the full screen hack.
So for those who would like to thank Eggy for all the work that he's helping with, and we'll have links in the show notes. But I have another question for you related to your day-to-day job. What's like a typical work day for someone who is a software maintenance engineer?
Okay, so my job at Red Hat is basically to help out the frontline whenever they come across something that might be a little bit too difficult. And I'll explain that a little bit better. We have frontline engineers who will take cases and they'll do the initial data gathering and they'll go through like the source reports and logs and whatnot, try to figure out what's going on or what's wrong with the issue or wrong with whatever system the customer has. And generally, we have like 3 layers of those engineers. And if those 3 layers cannot figure it out, and then they put the case in collaboration. And when they put the case in collaboration, that's where my side steps in, where the software maintenance engineer steps in. And then we basically have to do the same thing that they tried to do. Look through it, try and figure out if we can resolve the issue or pinpoint what's going on, what's wrong, use a little bit more deeper diving debug tools, maybe collect S traces, things like that maybe the frontline might have missed or that they're not familiar with. And that's kind of how the buildup goes with Red Hat in terms of the engineering side. Like you've got your ATSC foot in the door, you've got your TSC, which is the middle ground, you got your STSC, which is a senior that tries to help them out. And then once they can't figure it out, that's where I step in.
They're like special ops, basically.
Yeah.
You get to solve puzzles once again.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. It's solving puzzles. And the other thing with the SME is with Red Hat in general, like for the standard RHEL side, we have different SBRs, like SBR services or SBR shells. Services would handle systemd and pretty much most things that run with systemd, dbus, other services that run on the system like that. Shells would handle like any bash scripts or things that happen during, with shell bash coding or shell coding in general. We have a login team that handles login components. And so you've got all these different teams. But the SMEs, when the cases get past those different teams, the SMEs all work together as one. So one day I could be working on shell stuff. The other, I could be working on systemd stuff, maybe desktop stuff, maybe, my day-to-day will change because I'm that backline. I'm meant to be able to dig in deeper on a wider variety of things that, cool. Our frontline specific teams maybe are getting stuck on.
Nice. That explains how you're able to have so many projects.
Yeah.
That explains it.
It's a lot of experience, a lot of multitasking, a lot of what the hell is this? That's I do that a lot. Another thing that I do is trainings. So when we have new engineers that are coming in or engineers that want to learn about a specific component, there are specific parts and things that I specialize in. Like I'll do SSHD training or SSH training for the client and server side for SSH. I'll do systemd training or dbus training. I do DNS training because DNS is actually another thing that is handled on the services side. But yeah, so after the time that I've spent there are specific components that, everybody has those specific things that they get really, really good at. And so when you reach the SME, they're like, okay, well, you've got these couple of things that you're good at. Can you train people on them? And that's where that goes. So I do training for those people.
Now, this has given me another question to follow up for that, because you talk about the training people, and that means I'm wondering, curious if you have any advice for people who want to get involved in like open source software development and maybe starting a career in that sort of thing, because we've got a lot of feedback in our community. There are people who are changing jobs, even if like after a decade in another job, they want to become like a DevOps person or an engineer of some kind. And with your experience, what kind of advice would you give someone who wants to get started in getting involved in that sort of thing?
This is going to sound vague, but be curious. Dig into the things that you don't know. Read about the things you don't know. Take the time to dig in and really, really figure it out. Like when I first started at my job, I didn't know like anything about DNS, and it took me a long time to figure out a lot of the little kinks and quirks and things, and where to look and what to change and things like that. You have to spend the time to research those things, and you have to be motivated enough to do so. For somebody that wants to work on open source, if it's a project that you're interested in, you have to be motivated enough to do the research. As far as getting started on that research, documentation is the basics. Again, I've stated before, Arch is a great Linux tool or great learning tool, and that's because Arch documentation is fantastic. Mm-hmm. Like, I screwed up a lot when I was using Arch. A lot. But you also learn a lot. Like basics, for example, you're like creating your partitions, creating your installing grub or installing systemd boot, whatever you want to get your booting set up. Knowing about EFI partitions, that's those few basic things there are also vitally important when you're working on systems on a daily basis, especially systems that are crashing, systems that aren't booting properly. And again, I can't stress the importance of documentation enough, and proper documentation, because that's one that's really hard for people to both get and find. Well,
it's kind of funny because documentation is one of the most important things about any kind of software of any kind, and it's also the least likely someone wants to do it. Like the developers, like, I want to develop the software. I don't want to make documentation. Like, it's very important to have the documentation.
Yep.
It's like a catch-22, But that's a good answer. And I think that what you're saying, the be curious thing, is a very important, because getting started is you're going to have to start researching, depending on what topic you're picking. There's tons of them, so you're going to have to get digging in and stuff. And I think that's a really good. You said it was vague, but I think there's enough of a kernel there. See what I did? That you could move
Yes.
off on that and definitely get started. So thank you for that. And also, are there anything else you would like to talk about? I mean, there's projects or just anywhere you want to point someone to?
I would say the other thing regarding getting started on open source projects is learn packaging, the basics for learning packaging, like learn how to build an RPM, learn how to build a Flatpak, learn how to build a Debian package. I mean, that's a little bit bored. On the difficult side, I'm not a fan of Debian packaging, but
I agree.
That's
when you have compressions inside of compressions inside of compressions, it's a little complicated.
Yeah. And like Arch, again, going back to Arch once again, the PKG builds in Arch were my first introduction to basically a script that does the build for the package and learning how that works. And then once I saw that and I learned how to do that, and then I moved to Fedora and I saw spec sheets, I was like, oh, this is almost the same thing. They're not identical, but it's close enough to where you can figure out this is what does this, the same as this, same as this. And then you learn, and that's how you learn. I think packaging is also like super important in terms of figuring out basics of how to patch things, how to build things. A lot of people will have something in Linux or an application or something that they want to patch or change, and they don't know how to do it. Learning packaging is a great way to learn how to do that, because, for example, like if you have Lutris and you see, okay, this thing is broken in Lutris, but there's this PR here, pull request, that fixes it. You can download that patch, and then next thing is, okay, how do I apply this patch and build it? Some people would download the Lutris Git repo and then patch it and then manually build it. That's great, but that's not a package on your system, and now it's going to be confused with the package on your system. So next step, learn how to do it again in a package. It's a rinse, repeat failure until you get it right. And it takes a lot of failure before you get it right.
So I just want to point out that is not vague. That's very specific. And I think that's going to be very helpful to a lot of people. And it's also a great point, because one of the learning through the spec files and learning through the package builds and stuff like that is really good, because it's basically like a recipe of how to do something. And you could just see how it works. And also, like, Fedora's documentation is pretty solid too. So like you can compare the two, and like there's a lot of good stuff out there. And unfortunately, this is all the time we have for the interview, because we've already spent so much time. And thank you for joining us, Eggy. But we do have a little bit extra we want to give you, and that is the lightning round questions.
Okay, so something fun.
Yeah, these are just somewhat silly questions, like maybe. So first of all, if you could only choose one, muffin or cupcake?
Oh, that's going to be cupcake. I got a sweet tooth, man. I got a real gnarly sweet tooth. It's going to be cupcakes.
This is okay. So I'm losing it on this one. So
this time Michael's losing.
It's rare, but so I always we have this really silly competition between. Yeah. So Ryan and Jill are on the cupcake side, and I'm on the muffin side. So we try to bring that around. But Jill, what's the next one?
Crocs, as in the shoe Crocs. A good purchase or such a crock?
I'd wear them. They're comfortable. Why not?
Cool.
Well, dude, and they've got some cool stuff now. They've got, they got freaking Naruto Crocs.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't know.
They have Naruto Crocs.
Stuff.
You throw Crocs in anime, I'm in.
They have Star Wars Crocs.
I got no problem. Give me them floaty boys.
So, favorite food after a long day of coding?
Oh, that's a tough one, because I love food. I love food. I love cooking.
What's your favorite thing to cook? Like favorite type of cuisine to cook?
Mm-hmm.
That's also a hard question. Honestly, this is going to be real simple. I make eggs a lot. Fried eggs, scrambled eggs, eggs in a basket. I I'm very simple in terms of that. And eggs for me are just something that is easy to go to, easy to make. You can make them a bunch of different ways. You can mix them up with different things. You know, you can do French toast. You can do,
Yummy.
yeah, like eggs are my go-to.
That's a good one.
Iggy, if you could pick one and only one superpower, what would it be?
Whew, these are some hard questions.
Well, truthfully, you already have a lot of superpowers. That's why you're a glorious egg roll.
Exactly.
Oh, one superpower.
I'm surprised you haven't thought about this before.
Teleportation.
that's a good
there
one.
we go. That's a good one.
That's a good one. I
I
like
think
it.
teleportation. Yeah, because that way I'd be able to travel wherever I want to go
Instantly.
instantly without having to pay ridiculous amounts of sums for travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also maybe visit other planets too, you know?
Yeah.
That'd be
If I
cool.
don't suffocate. Yeah.
If you don't miss, yeah.
If you don't miss.
And
Yep,
visit,
sorry, missed the moon there.
Yep.
and visit the state of Linux gaming in the future so that you can fix things now.
That's time travel. That's time travel, Jill.
Whew.
Teleportation is kind of like time travel.
It is.
But-
but it's, yeah.
I guess if you do time dilation,
Yeah, you can
Could
do
do
time
that.
dilation.
you go to a different planet, maybe. Anyway, if you could only pick one and just one, anime or video games.
Oh, that's hard. I would say video games because you could put anime in video games.
Yay!
That's a good
That's
loophole.
a good one. And that's one of the reasons, Aggie, why
About
I
that
use
loophole.
I use Proton-GE to play Genshin Impact. Here's
Yeah.
Pyro's time.
That's awesome.
I love Genshin Impact.
Yeah. That is a hard question, though. Man, I love anime. I watch a lot.
Yeah. Very cool. And another question we have is and this is another one that's going to be really hard. What's your favorite video game of all time and why?
Oh,
Usually these questions are pretty silly, but I've realized this one is actually kind of difficult.
That one is.
Yeah.
That one's pretty tough. All time, huh?
That's a hard one.
You know what? I'm going to say the BioShock series.
Oh,
Whole series.
wonderful. Good choice.
That's a good one.
Love the BioShock series.
All right, so let's bring it back to a little bit more of the easy question. You know, this is the last one of the lightning round because it's not been very lightning in this case. But most people, and this is probably the most important question that everyone has on their mind. What exactly is glorious about egg rolls? And how did you get that moniker?
Hey, you liked cooking eggs earlier.
I mean, I started laughing. For those who watch the video and I'm laughing for no apparent reason, I thought, oh, right, Eggy loves making eggs. Of course he does.
Yeah, of course
in general, I love egg rolls. I am part Thai. My mom's side of the family is Thai, and I've loved egg rolls growing up. Part of the reason that I came up with that is because I had another handle before by the name of Black Hive, and that was in the name of a tattoo parlor that was nearby in my neighborhood, and I felt that name wasn't fitting for my personality. I'm generally not as I'm an upbeat, fun person. I'm a nice person. I try to be nice anyway. I think
it's perfect.
Yeah, I like talking to people. I don't want them to hear Black Hive and be like, that sounds grim. So I sat down one day and I was like, I need something that's going to be goofy, silly, something that'll make people laugh, and that is a conversation starter. So I came up with Glorious Eggroll, and then I wasn't sure if I was going to stick with it. And then I went to a Chinese restaurant, and they literally had an egg roll with a ninja thing and 2 swords.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, oh my God. So this was years ago. So I took a picture of it and I kept it ever since, and I used it for all of my art. It was just a little cartoon that they had on their menu, this ninja egg roll with 2 swords, and I was like, yep, that's mine now.
I love it. So it actually is a perfect name for like
It is.
when I first met you, and when I found out you were Glorious Eggroll, we met in one of the conferences, and I just like I had to tell you like this is such a fun name. And when I first saw the name in like the Proton-GE stuff and like everything, I was like, what?
What is GE? And then you're
this
like,
is such a fun name. Like that. Yeah, egg rolls are glorious. I agree. Yeah. But anyway,
Instead of a spirit animal, it's a spirit food.
it is. It's a spirit food.
I love it. I love it. So, Eggy, thank you so much for joining us on Destination Linux. It was wonderful to have you.
That was awesome. I appreciate being here. I appreciate everybody that's tuned in to listen. And again, thanks for having me. I know it took a while for us to get it done, but
hopefully you can come back on the show again without it being two years from now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And we could have talked to you for hours. Just like old friends getting together, talking about gaming and Linux.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, this show is already almost hours, but
yes, it is.
Yeah, I said I can talk. I mean, I can talk.
So we're definitely happy back on, and especially when we get some new projects. I assume they're going to be like 4 more projects in the next month.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
probably.
You never know what I'm going to pull out my butt next time. It's like, oh yeah, here's this one.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, and we can't wait to have you back on.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, guys.
Love you, Eggy. Aww.
A big thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us by watching or listening to Destination Linux. However you do it, we love your faces. Join us in the Discord server. You can get all sorts of great conversations going, whether you want to talk about music or fitness or Linux. I mean, we have a Linux section, which is most of the server.
Yeah.
You can go to tuxdigital.com/discord to do that. And you can actually watch this show live. If you didn't know that, you can do that. You can become a patron of Destination Linux and watch the show live as we record it. And that's just one of the awesome perks you get. You also get access to the patron-only post show that happens every week after the show. So you can watch the show live and then join us for an awesome, like basically it's like a Linux user group of the show. So do that. tuxdigital.com/membership to sign up to become a patron. Also, we have ways to support the channel if you want to do it through swag. You can go to tuxdigital.com/store, which is the new store. Successfully has happened. So you can go check it out. We actually have some new swag you should check out. The Retro Vibes version of the Destination Linux logo. It's basically like inspired by the 33% more Jill concept. So go check that out. tuxdigital.com/store. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. And we have t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and so much more at tuxdigital.com/store.
And make sure to check out all the incredible shows here on Tux Digital. That's right. We have a whole network of shows to fill your entire week with wonderful geeky goodness. Check out the Das Geek channel. Ryan reviews awesome tech, discusses ways to keep your privacy intact online, and geeks out on all things open source and Linux. So go check that out.
Maybe not, because he didn't show up for this episode.
I was just thinking that.
Just kidding, but go check it out. He also had a new video recently, fairly recently anyway, about the swag bag that Red Hat sent for the Red Hat Summit. It is awesome.
Yeah.
It is the best swag bag I have ever seen. So go check it out. You can see what's all in there. And go check out his content. It is really good content. And since he's here to listen to me say that, you can definitely go do that. It's really good stuff.
Yes. And everyone head to tuxdigital.com and subscribe to all our great shows. And don't forget to leave a rating on your favorite app so others can discover the power of open source and keep those penguins marching and the full Monty of Linux and open source awesome sauce.
Everybody have a great week. And remember that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Aw, we love you all.
Most of you. Someone had to say it. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.